a shocking revelation has surfaced in court, one that might completely change the trajectory of the ongoing investigations into Sean Diddy Combs. Out of nowhere, long-forgotten voice recordings from Aaron Carter, made while he was still alive, have been unearthed, and their content is disturbing enough to freeze even the most skeptical listeners.
I go on my Twitter and I see people saying, "You look like you have AIDS, you should go." I don't understand how I dedicated 22 years of my life to my fans, and now they turn on me.
Do you regret ever getting involved in...
I didn't have a choice. It got bad when I was about 15 years old.
In these tapes, Aaron talks about fearing for his life, feeling hunted and being betrayed by the very people he once called friends. But now, with his death ruled a tragic accident and the music industry spinning its usual PR cycle, these tapes raise a terrifying question. What if Aaron wasn't paranoid? What if he was right? And what if the people he named are the same ones under federal investigation today? Let's break it all down. Long before this story became part of a federal investigation, before any courtroom or headline took it seriously, Aaron Carter was already speaking out. His words weren't carefully rehearsed interviews or vague online posts. They were raw, desperate broadcasts. He turned on his camera and looked straight at the public, not as a celebrity, but as a man cornered by something much bigger than himself. In video after video, he begged people to believe him. He said he wasn't safe, that something terrible was being orchestrated behind closed doors, and that powerful individuals were trying to silence him. This wasn't speculation. He detailed how his family had turned on him, how executives owed him money, and how he was being denied the chance to protect himself. He asked fans for help raising money to flee to an undisclosed location. He explained that his real estate deals were being sabotaged, that people were interfering with his basic ability to move freely or even sell his home. These weren't the kind of problems that come from a messy breakup or financial mismanagement. These were the actions of people who, in his words, wanted him out of the picture. Aaron spoke about being followed, about strange encounters with law enforcement, and about being portrayed in the media as mentally unstable, all while pleading for a private security detail and legal support. It wasn't just that he felt unsafe, it was that he knew too much. Again and again, he said it outright. If anything happens to him, he wanted the world to know it wasn't something he did to himself. And then, nothing. Silence. The same people who dismissed him as paranoid suddenly had nothing to say. The ones who ignored him when he was alive started mourning him with photo collages and hashtags. But the real story had already been told. Aaron told it himself. The question now isn't whether he was telling the truth. It's why so many people ignored him while he was alive, only to act shocked after everything fell apart. But Aaron wasn't alone in sounding the alarm. Someone else, far from the spotlight, had also been paying close attention. Long before lawsuits and federal investigations, there were subtle patterns, relationships and arrangements that only now are being re-examined with fresh eyes. Aaron Carter once recounted staying at Diddy's house as a teenager, not for a brief visit or a music collaboration, but for extended periods where he shared personal space, including reportedly sleeping in the same room. At the time, it was framed as mentorship. In the entertainment world, this kind of proximity to power is often sold as opportunity, a chance to learn from the best. But as more stories surface, that narrative has begun to unravel. Aaron remembered being pulled aside and told, "This is what you've got to do to make it," a sentence that feels significantly more layered now. Was it guidance, or was it a boundary-crossing moment wrapped in industry packaging? Critics and insiders have started pointing out that mentorship in entertainment often lacks structure and oversight, especially when it involves young, impressionable performers. And when that mentorship comes from someone with influence, wealth, and media protection, the lines get blurred even further. What makes Aaron's situation especially troubling is that it wasn't unique. Other young stars have described similar experiences, being introduced to the world of fame through personal relationships with older industry figures who had the power to make or break careers. These aren't accusations in a legal sense, they're indicators of how lopsided the industry dynamic can be. When a teenager finds themselves under the guidance of a mogul with no adult advocates, what they interpret as opportunity might be something entirely different. Aaron may not have understood what he was walking into at the time, but years later, as he began speaking out and questioning the motives of those early connections, it became clear that his experience had left deep marks. Today, those same stories are being reevaluated, not as isolated anecdotes, but as potential clues in a much bigger and darker puzzle. And one voice in particular wasn't afraid to say what others were only whispering. Her warnings came early, loud, and unfiltered. While the public continued to shrug off Aaron Carter's claims as emotional outbursts, there were others, less famous, more grounded, who had been sounding the alarm for years. One of the most vocal among them was Jaguar Wright, an artist who became known not just for her music, but for her blunt honesty about what she saw happening behind the curtain.
I think two of the most tragic stories in Hollywood right now in the past 5 years is Aaron Carter and Nipsey Hussle. Aaron Carter was despicable, though, because he begged for help in front of the world. He begged for financial support to help get him a private security team to keep him alive. He said on numerous occasions, if anything happens to me, I promise you, I am not suicidal. And no one said anything.
Silence breaker for my brother, who is a artist, and now they're after my life. My whole family is after my life, and they're setting me up. And Sony Records owes me $3.5 million, and they don't want to pay me, and it would be in their better interest, just like Michael told me. And Brad Paisley, who sued Sony Records for $10 million, they owe me money, and they're trying to off. And I'm begging you and I'm pleading you, help me raise $100,000 as soon as I can so I can move to an undisclosed location where I am safe. My realtor won't sell my house. They're all involved in this, and they're trying to keep me there. They had cops come and check for a rope in my garage saying I wanted to hang myself. So please trust what I'm saying.
The thing is, you have Jaguar Wrights and Corey Feldmans and Orlando Browns and you have Dame Dashes and you have Gene Deals. You have people that have worked from so many different aspects and so many different, and yet all roads lead back to the same conclusion.
Jaguar didn't mince words. She spoke openly about what she described as systematic silencing, not just of victims, but of anyone who dared to question the behavior of the industry's untouchables. To her, Aaron's story wasn't just believable, it was predictable. She saw his unraveling not as the result of mental breakdown, but as the expected outcome for someone who tried to walk away from something he was never supposed to escape. Jaguar claimed that Aaron, like many others, had been pulled into a network where silence was the unspoken rule, and where breaking it came with a cost. She referenced others, Corey Feldman, Orlando Brown, even Dame Dash, all people who had, at different times, tried to expose what they'd seen or experienced. The pattern was disturbingly familiar. Speak out, and your career stalls. Keep talking, and suddenly you're portrayed as erratic, unstable, or addicted. It was a strategy, she claimed, not a coincidence, and it was effective. The industry knew how to erase people in plain sight. What made Jaguar's warnings especially chilling was how closely they matched the timelines and details in Aaron's own rants. She spoke about handlers, media manipulation, and the use of personal weaknesses, like past mistakes or medical history, as tools to discredit anyone who tried to challenge the narrative. In this framework, Aaron wasn't just a cautionary tale. He was a case study, a young performer caught in a system that had no room for rebellion and even less tolerance for truth. And now, years after these warnings were laughed off or ignored, federal agents are starting to connect the same dots that people like Jaguar laid out long ago. But it wasn't just the voices speaking out, it was the way Aaron's story ended that forced even skeptics to look twice. When the news broke that Aaron Carter had been found unresponsive in his home, the initial reaction from media outlets was predictable. Words like troubled, disturbed, and tragic were thrown around, and his passing was quickly linked to past habits and personal struggles.
Following developing news tonight in Lancaster, where pop star Aaron Carter has died at the age of 34.
Yeah, the troubled performer grew up in the limelight, but he was in and out of rehab several times in his short life. Chris Wolf is live for us in Lancaster. He's got more on this. Chris?
Yeah, Rick, MB, the street is now cleared. People have been moving in and out of that home behind me all day. And tonight we heard from some of those closest to Aaron Carter, and they all say the same thing. They all share stories of a very kind, loving, caring, humble, yet troubled young man. It's the tragic death of a young performer, and now family, friends, and fans around the world are suffering the loss. Singer, rapper, actor Aaron Carter is dead at the age of 34.
Oh my God.
Carter's close friend and stylist shared this video of a recent birthday celebration for Carter's fiancée, Melanie Martin. She is also the mother of their 11-month-old son, Prince.
It's very painful, very, very painful. I talked to him 2 weeks ago. He was at the dentist and he FaceTimed me. He said, come over. And I said, I have work to do. I wish I could have just go see him at least one more time.
LA County firefighters say they received a call about a drowning. The LA County Sheriff's Department says a house sitter called 911 around 11 a.m. Saturday to report a man unresponsive in his bathtub. It was Carter.
But as the details began to surface, the story became harder to explain away. First came the location, his bathtub, eerily reminiscent of other high-profile cases that had drawn similar speculation. Then came the delay. Toxicology results, which usually take a few weeks, were held back for 5 months. When they were finally released, they didn't align with what many expected. There was no water in his lungs, ruling out drowning. There were reports of compressed gas use, but the narrative remained foggy, inconsistent, and full of holes. What stood out even more was the behavior of the only other person present that day, his house sitter. According to trained neighbors who arrived after hearing the emergency call, she refused to let them in, even when one of them carried medical equipment. She locked the door. She didn't ask for help. And when law enforcement arrived, she reportedly tried to block their entry too. That kind of reaction raised more than just suspicion. It raised questions about what she knew and why she acted, like she had something to hide. Aaron had told people he didn't feel safe. He had posted videos just days earlier saying he was in danger. He had even named specific people he believed were after him.
Aaron Carter was found dead in a bathtub in his home in Los Angeles last November. Since that time, TMZ has reported the LA County coroner did not find water in his lungs, meaning he didn't drown. Carter's mother, Jane Schneck, posted photos on Facebook that show the bathroom where her son was found. She wrote on Facebook, "Because of my son's mental illness and prescription drug issues, they, the cops, just wanted it to be something easy that they didn't have the time or inclination to address." Schneck wants a more thorough investigation. She wrote that her son was receiving threats from many people, and she believes there were people out there who wanted to harm him. So joining me to discuss this issue and the death of Aaron Carter is Joseph Scott Morgan. He's a forensic death investigator and also the host of the Body Bags podcast. Joseph, welcome back to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Antoinette. Good to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about Aaron Carter's death. He was found in a bathtub in his home. We see from these photographs that there was some discoloration in the water. I have a feeling that was probably from his body releasing fluids following his death. So what can we glean thus far, aside from the fact that he didn't drown? They didn't find water in his lungs, according to this report by TMZ.
Well, if you're talking about the death investigation itself, we can glean the fact that they haven't come back with toxicology results yet. So at this point, and as you know, medical examiners and coroners are, I don't want to use the term notorious, but it takes time for these things to be fully realized because these tests take time. You don't, in a death investigation, you don't want things hurried up. And it seems as though some parties that are involved in this case want it sped up. And that's the most dangerous thing you can do. So it takes time to analyze all of this and not just look for what we refer to as qualitative results, but quantitative results. The mother has already stated that he's got a history of drug abuse. I think that's pretty widely known. However, it's not going to be surprising to find things in the system, but exactly how much is there? That's where we turn to quantitative, and that takes time.
So what are the first steps here? You arrive on a scene such as this, or Maybe as a death investigator, you don't arrive on the scene. Maybe somebody's taken to the hospital. The body is taken to the morgue. I assume some sort of autopsy is performed just because of his age. He was a young guy.
Oh yeah, yeah, and this is not necessarily what classically I think most people would associate with as a violent death, but we would consider this to be an unnatural death. And if you don't have like kind of indwelling natural disease, let's think about heart disease, for instance, which is arguably the #1 killer in America. You don't have some kind of respiratory issue or something like that, and you have a private physician that's willing to sign the death certificate, there will be an examination. Now, to what degree they did this examination is still in question. We've got a big indicator. The mother has stated that there was no water found in his lungs. The only way that can be assessed is by conducting a full autopsy, where the body's open and methodically each organ system is examined and samples of those organ systems are taken. And not only are they going to do toxicology into that, they're going to do histology, which means when we take those little bits of organs at autopsy, they'll cut them into very slight pieces and place them on a microscopic slide and look at them under the gaze of a microscope, highly magnified. And that way you can see if there's any kind of indwelling processes going on, whether it be disease or something unnatural that's occurring, that can give you a specific indicator as to what the cause and perhaps manner of death is.
These toxicology results can take some time to come back. I know where I live, it's often a couple of months, maybe longer, and you really can't finalize an autopsy report until you have that toxicology back. You might have some type of preliminary cause of death if it's obvious through autopsy, but let's say it was a drug overdose. You're going to have to wait for that tox screen to come back. Am I wrong?
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. And you want that because that's going to be key to everything here.
Yet, when the worst actually happened, his concerns were brushed aside as unfortunate paranoia. His mother shared graphic photos of the scene, pleading with authorities to take a deeper look, and slowly, fans began to connect the dots. The timing of his passing, one day after Diddy's birthday, felt unsettling to some, even symbolic. But symbolism aside, it was the behavior, the delays, and the silence from those involved that shifted the conversation. Something wasn't right, and people began asking, if Aaron was telling the truth, who made sure he wouldn't tell it anymore? And just as the questions started to grow, an unexpected voice stepped forward with a claim that could reframe everything. While the public tried to make sense of Aaron Carter's fate, another storm was brewing, one that came not from the shadows, but from one of the most outspoken artists alive. Kanye West, a figure known for pushing boundaries and exposing uncomfortable truths, took to social media and dropped what many considered a digital grenade.
On November 19th, 2016, a week and a half after Donald Trump won the presidential election, Kanye West, now known as Ye, held a concert in Sacramento. Most people in the audience were, of course, young people and presumably Hillary Clinton voters and presumably deeply disappointed by her loss a week and a half before. 2 days later, Kanye West was in the hospital. Well, at the house of his family's exercise trainer, a man called Harley Pasternak, West apparently suffered some kind of mental break. Pasternak called an ambulance to pick him up. West was taken away, and then he was sedated with at least 7 different psychiatric medications, including benzodiazepines, lithium, sleeping pills, and olanzapine. News reports suggested that West had experienced a profound psychiatric episode. He'd gone completely off the deep end. He'd gone crazy, and they've been saying that ever since. West, over time, though, told a very different story. In his telling, after what he'd said on stage in Sacramento, Harley Pasternak was trying to shut him up. Media outlets are not usually in the business of ignoring remarkable things, but they did. And what he posted was a picture of a text exchange that he had had with Harley Pasternak.
Says, I'm going to help you one of a couple ways. First, you and I sit down and have a loving and open conversation, but you don't use cuss words. And everything that is discussed is based in fact, and not some crazy stuff that dumb friend of yours told you or you saw in a tweet. Second option, I have you institutionalized again, where they medicate the crap out of you and you go back to zombie land forever. Play date, play date with the kids just won't be the same. They wanted to medicate me every day. You realize, like, they could have just switched the medication and I wouldn't be here. And on the news, they would have said it was because of a mental issue. Every time they say I'm crazy, it's just when I'm saying the truth. So what's the crazy part, really?
Try if you can to imagine a more sinister threat than that, a more chilling threat than that. Do what I say or I will turn your brain to mush. I will destroy your relationship with your own children. I will send you back to, quote, zombie land forever. Effectively, I'll kill you.
In a screenshot that would soon go viral, Kanye revealed text messages from Harley Pasternak, a well-connected celebrity trainer and consultant with ties to dozens of major stars. The messages weren't casual. They read like instructions from someone who believed they were above consequence. In one line, Harley suggested two options: have a peaceful, controlled conversation, or be sent back to an institution where, as he put it, they would medicate the life out of you. He even referred to zombie land, implying total mental shutdown. These weren't warnings, they were threats, cloaked in the language of concern. What made this revelation even more disturbing was Harley's alleged connection to Aaron Carter. Both had crossed paths in the tight-knit entertainment circuit, and both had stories that suddenly started to mirror each other. Aaron had spoken about being misrepresented, about being labeled unstable to strip him of credibility. Kanye echoed the same theme, saying that every time he spoke the truth, the media called him crazy. But these weren't vague theories.
With no Instagram, nobody living, and I don't want to hear from none of these Jewish talk about, oh, he's in an episode. Harley Pasternak followed me to the hotel. They kill Aaron Carter, and now they acting like they won't clear the Backstreet Boys sample. You get what I'm saying? Harley Pasternak, Pusha, your trainer. Harley Pasternak, Jay-Z. You get what I'm saying? And then be hanging around these niggas just for the money or some Mike Rubin. I slap the shit out of Mike Rubin. I see that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yo, these bro. You know what I'm saying? I'm on my Farrakhan Don shit right now, bro. Because guess what? These Yeezys gonna sell. They sabotaged the show today. They sabotaged the Instagram. They cut off the Adidas contract. They did all. Then they want to go get light-skinned Ye. You gotta understand.
Kanye named names. He pointed to a pattern where mental health wasn't treated, but weaponized. Where those who deviated from the script were quickly pulled back into line, sometimes through professional consequences, other times through psychological manipulation. This pattern wasn't new, but it had never been laid out so bluntly by someone of Kanye's stature. And when you look at Aaron's timeline, his claims of being watched, of feeling cornered, of being set up, it doesn't sound that different from what Kanye described. The chilling part? In both cases, the consequences weren't hypothetical. One of them is gone. The other continues to fight battles that seem to intensify with every truth he shares. If Harley was indeed operating as more than a fitness coach, if he was part of something larger that managed narratives and behavior, then Aaron's cries for help were far more accurate than anyone wanted to admit. And Kanye's warning may not have been a rant, but a decoded roadmap of how stars are silenced from the inside. And as whispers turned into questions, the government quietly stepped in, looking not just at Aaron, but at a wider web of connections. As the public fixated on headlines and social media debates, something far more consequential was happening behind closed doors. Federal agents, spurred by mounting testimony and a civil lawsuit filed by Cassie Ventura, began to dig into a network of relationships and incidents that seemed to point to a much deeper problem. Cassie's lawsuit wasn't just another celebrity dispute, it was a detailed document that named names, gave dates, and painted a picture of long-term mistreatment, intimidation, and cover-up. Among those named was Roger Bonds, a longtime bodyguard who had worked closely with Diddy during the height of his career.
I think that Diddy's former bodyguard, Roger Bonds, is going to be the man to end it all. Roger Bonds is a name that we've heard brought up a lot during this trial as being Diddy's security, who is around and doing certain things that a co-conspirator would technically do. I can guarantee that the feds came to him and were offering him a deal to snitch on Diddy. And we know that the feds started this whole investigation into Diddy off of Cassie Ventura's civil lawsuit that she filed, and she named Roger Bonds in this lawsuit, and he worked for Diddy from 2002 to 2012. Cassie Ventura's statements about Roger Bonds is that he was there when she was getting by Diddy, and she named Roger Bonds in her civil lawsuit as being in the car when Diddy was stomping her head in. Her injuries were so bad that after that, Roger Bonds was the one that had to take her and put her into the London hotel. Now, after Cassie Ventura's lawsuit came out, Roger Bonds came out and did an interview with BLASTS TV, and he confirmed everything that Cassie Ventura said and everything that he did. He also claimed that Diddy reached out to him and was trying to coach him what to say to certain news organizations that were going to ask him for interviews because he was named in the lawsuit. That isn't all. He talks about multiple different times seeing Cassie Ventura being. Roger Bonds also said that Diddy went to Kid Cudi's house when he wasn't there. He also said that Diddy put hands on his former assistant, Capricorn Clark, who we're gonna see testify on Tuesday. He said that Diddy beat her up so bad that she would leave and then later file a lawsuit against Diddy that he settled. That way she would never talk about the situation. And remember, the feds allege that Diddy and a co-conspirator kidnapped a female victim to make her facilitate the break-in of Kid Cudi's house. Now, we know that Capricorn Clark's testimony is going to come into play about Kid Cudi's house being broke into, because in Kid Cudi's testimony, he confirmed that Capricorn Clark told him that Diddy and an affiliate, which I wonder if it's Roger Bonds, forced her in a car to go to his home. And Roger Bonds also talks about Kid Cudi's car with the Molotov. Roger Bonds also confirmed that Diddy did have a business problem and he would use a ton of different and he would send members of the Combs enterprise like security and more to go pick up prescriptions in their own name. Roger Bonds said that he would actually do this for Diddy himself on multiple occasions.
For years, Bonds remained silent, but after the lawsuit went public, he did something few insiders ever do. He confirmed everything. Not just with a tweet or vague statement, but in an on-camera interview where he gave context, admitted his role in helping to hide situations, and explained how powerful people orchestrated events behind the scenes. What made Bonds' admission so explosive was that it aligned perfectly with what Cassie had described. He spoke of nights where he had to help hide visible injuries, of meetings where he was coached on what to say, of favors he was asked to perform that blurred legal and moral boundaries. And he wasn't just pointing fingers, he was implicating himself as someone who had participated, knowingly or not, in maintaining a protective wall around a public figure who was now facing legal consequences. Homeland Security didn't ignore this. According to leaked court documents, one of their top digital forensics experts, Josh Croft, managed to recover deleted files from an old MacBook linked to someone known only as Frank Black, an alias Cassie claimed was used for private dealings, secret meetings, and hotel bookings. That laptop had been wiped, but the hard drive still held fragments of data. Videos, emails, metadata, all slowly pieced together to form a narrative. Far more incriminating than a lawsuit ever could. But here's where it gets especially troubling. This wasn't about Cassie alone. Federal agents began expanding the scope of their inquiry. Other names started popping up. Other digital trails, aliases, and online fingerprints emerged. The laptops weren't just full of logs, they were full of patterns. Multiple hotel aliases, recurring credit cards, and transactions that aligned with known events involving other celebrities and high-profile parties. And as Homeland Security kept digging, a new theory began to emerge, that Aaron Carter might have seen or known something tied to this web, something he tried to expose, and that he may have been targeted, not for who he was, but for what he had access to. And the deeper they looked, the more disturbing the physical evidence became. Items never meant to be seen were suddenly in the hands of investigators. The digital evidence collected by federal agents didn't just confirm suspicions, it opened the door to an entire hidden world. Inside the laptops, hard drives, and encrypted folders retrieved from properties tied to the investigation, investigators began to piece together what many believe is a long-running system of concealment. One laptop in particular had been factory reset, its memory seemingly erased. But forensics expert Josh Croft didn't stop there. He physically removed the internal drive and used recovery software to restore fragments of files that had been hidden or deleted. What he found suggested the device belonged to a guest user account, but the main login, It read Frank Black, a name Cassie had specifically cited as Diddy's alias when booking hotels and organizing private gatherings. That name appeared again and again, not just on the computer, but in hotel records, transportation logs, and even prescription receipts. But it wasn't just the digital trail that left investigators unsettled. Photographs taken during federal raids revealed a staggering inventory of items, some of which were deeply unsettling.
Let's go through all the photos of what investigators seized from Diddy. Starting off here, we've got a couple bottles of what appears to be a lubricant. We've got a lighter and some pink, like, over-the-counter pills. Also, like, how long has this lube been here? Because why is this, like, drawer warped? We've got some pink, like, crushed up powder, which appears to be 2C, probably found within this pill bottle. It appears this is some kind of, like, Adderall prescription, some candies. Here we've got a prescription for Klonopin, which is like kind of like a Xanax, I believe, and Frank Black is listed as the name, which is interesting because that's the name that Cassie told us that he would use for his hotels and his freak-offs. Here we've got a drawer of I believe what we've already seen is just all packed into this drawer. Now, I saw a ton of bottles of Visine as I went through these photos. Also, here is a lot of money. I guess this is some hotel, and this is where he would go and do the FOs at, and I guess that money was for the men that would come through. We've got baby oil all over this place. Like, in every single room, there's a little bit of baby oil somewhere. Here's a picture of the bathroom. It looks like his stuff is still there. I don't know when they came and took these photos. Like, his phone is still there. It looks like all of his stuff, his glasses are still there. They just came in there and then got him out of there and went through it all. Here are some more bottles of lube that look like they were found in maybe a shower or a bath. And this one made my stomach sink. Actually, I have one right here because this is what I put all my files on. This holds so much. You can put a ton of videos and pictures and things like that on there, which to me, that looks like it's evidence with all the FOs, the videos and things like that.
Cabinets and drawers packed with bottles of prescription medications under aliases, crushed pink powder and empty pill capsules, stuffed into toiletry bags, multiple bottles of personal lubricants scattered across bathrooms, bedrooms, and storage bins. Cash, tens of thousands of dollars, stacked in hotel rooms without clear source or purpose. Devices like USB sticks, micro SD cards, and external drives, many unmarked, others labeled with handwritten codes. Even more unusual was the presence of tools like miniature safes, burner phones, and handwritten ledgers, items that could only belong to someone who had a reason to hide where they'd been and what they were doing. Perhaps most disturbing, investigators recovered footage that had not been fully erased. Clips that appeared to show private encounters, sometimes with unaware individuals, filmed in settings that aligned with the hotel logs tied to the Frank Black alias. The implication wasn't just one of questionable behavior, it was one of orchestration, of meticulous planning to avoid detection, every room rented under a false name, every device labeled to conceal intent, every bottle and envelope stashed, with just enough distance to claim ignorance. When paired with the earlier statements from Cassie and the testimony from Roger Bonds, a chilling picture emerged that someone had built an environment of secrecy where anything could happen, and nothing could be traced. What Aaron Carter might have seen, heard, or tried to speak about in connection with all this remains unclear. But his claims about hidden forces, secret tapes, and being trapped suddenly sounded less like paranoia and more like foresight. He wasn't imagining that he was being watched. He wasn't exaggerating when he said he wanted to vanish, because the truth is, people who get too close to these systems rarely make it out with their story intact, and when they do, it's often too late for anyone to listen. And while investigators connected more dots, another name came up, someone who had their own terrifying encounter, one that literally went up in flames. Rapper Kid Cudi dropped a bombshell in court. He claimed that Diddy once broke into his house. Days later, his Porsche was firebombed. The reason? Cudi had started dating Cassie. The day he confronted Diddy, he said his security cameras were repositioned, his gifts ransacked, and his dog locked in the bathroom. Then came the car fire. A Molotov cocktail, Cudi claims.
Now, about that Kid Cudi testimony, it was fiery, figuratively and, of course, literally. He told the court that he started dating Cassie around 2011, and in December of that year, Cassie told him Diddy had found out about us. The same day, he said that he got a call from a Diddy employee who told him that Diddy was at his house. So Cudi, he went home, and he called Diddy on the way. He said it went something like this. I said, MFer, you in my house? And he was like, what's up? I was like, MF, are you in my house? And he said, I just want to talk to you. I was like, I'm on my way over right now. He was like, I'm here. Now, when Cuddy got home, no one actually was there. But he said his security cameras had been moved, angled away from where they were originally pointed before he left his home. Gifts from Chanel that he had for his family on the kitchen counter, they had been opened. And his dog, who normally roamed free around the house, was suddenly locked in the bathroom. Now, you fast forward to January 2012, Cuddy testified that this happened. His dog watcher called to tell him that his Porsche was on fire. The jury, well, they saw these images. And Cuddy said it looked like the top had been cut open and a Molotov cocktail was dropped inside. The prosecutor asked, what was your reaction to your car being set on fire? Cuddy said, what the F? Now, he testified he met with Diddy at a members-only club the next day. He walked into the room, Diddy was alone, and he said he saw this. It was one wall was all windows, and Sean Combs was standing there staring out the window with his hands behind his back like a Marvel supervillain. They ended up talking about Cuddy's relationship with Cassie and how neither of them seemed to know that the other was actually dating her at the same time.
Diddy denied it, but when asked directly, he just said, I don't know what you're talking about. The message was clear. Step out of line, and there will be consequences. Makeup artists, hotel managers, and former assistants have all come forward, one by one, saying they witnessed violent incidents involving Diddy. And yet, most stayed silent for years, fearing the backlash. Because if someone like Aaron Carter, loved by fans worldwide, could be erased so easily, what chance did anyone else have? And now the question is no longer if Diddy is guilty, but how deep this goes. By now, it's no longer about isolated incidents, random tragedies, or troubled stars falling apart. It's about a pattern, one that's too consistent, too calculated, and far too deliberate to be brushed aside as coincidence. When you connect the dots between Aaron Carter's final cries for help, Kanye West's alarming messages, the disturbing evidence tied to the Frank Black alias, and first-hand testimonies from people like Kid Cudi, Cassie Ventura, and Roger Bonds, a picture begins to emerge, and it's not one the entertainment industry wants anyone to see. Aaron wasn't just struggling, he was warning. Kanye wasn't just venting, he was documenting. Cassie wasn't just suing, she was pulling the curtain back on something massive. And with every recovered file, every raided hotel room, and every altered surveillance camera, the idea of a hidden power structure controlling careers, reputations, and even lives no longer feels like a conspiracy theory. It feels like the truth finally surfacing. Aaron Carter's story is heartbreaking, not just because of how it ended, but because of how many people had the chance to stop it and didn't. He told us he wasn't safe. He said people were watching him. He named names, asked for protection, and was laughed at. He was mocked online, discredited in the media, and portrayed as unstable until the moment he was gone. Only then did people start revisiting his words, not as meltdowns, but as evidence. And now, with federal investigations digging deeper, it's those very words, those live streams, interviews, and desperate video clips that may become central pieces of a legal storm that reaches far beyond Aaron's name. Because this story isn't just about music, fame, or celebrity scandal. It's about what happens when people with too much power go unchecked for too long. When wealth, influence, and control are used not to uplift others, but to silence them. And now, for the first time, those who once hid in plain sight are being forced into the open. Whether or not justice is served remains to be seen, but the fear that once kept people quiet is starting to break. More voices are coming forward. More evidence is being uncovered. And the one thing that's become impossible to deny is that Aaron Carter tried to warn us. Let us know what you think in the comments. Was Aaron Carter simply a troubled star? Or was he trying to expose something much deeper? Do the testimonies, the recovered files, and the eerie coincidences point to a larger system of control operating in plain sight? Your voice matters more than ever, especially when mainstream media chooses silence over accountability. Hit the like button if you believe these stories deserve to be heard, and share this video with someone who still thinks it's all just conspiracy talk. Make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications, because the investigation is far from over. And what's coming next could change everything. Stay tuned.